Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Challenge Accepted. I'm Thomas, and I'm here with Frank.
Hey, everybody.
And today we're talking about House of the Dragon, episode 3?
3. Yes, the Burning Mill. This is the calm before the storm. Things are really about to kick off. I actually thought they were going to kick off for this episode, but it makes sense. I'm like in a rush, thinking that we don't have a lot of episodes ahead of us. This is only episode 3 of 8, so we're fine.
Right.
We're ready to go. We have some crazy stuff coming ahead.
Yeah, this definitely felt like a lot of buildup in this episode, but you know, we're kind of talking about it before we were recording. There's some things that happen that I guess weren't in the book, but
Yeah.
let's break it down so that we can kind of talk about some of that stuff.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick breakdown on this. I'm going to go section by section, not necessarily chronologically, so just here we go. All right, so we start off, again, this is called Burning Mill. So we see the Blackwoods and the Brackens who have been fighting there, the Hatfield and McCoys, essentially, of Game of Thrones. And they're about to start their fight, and they're just always looking for a reason to attack each other. This is the latest one. One is sworn to Aegon, one is sworn to Rhaenyra. We see the aftermath of their attack, and this is one of the first provocations in the Dance of the Dragons to come.
Ooh, good
and
word.
Yeah, and so it just shows like the senselessness of this fight, and it's being echoed further out. It's an allegory for World War I, which is a lot of George R. R. Martin's writings is based off of British history. We go to the councils are hearing about this war and are like, oh, hey, this is our excuse to attack. But Alicent for the Greens and Rhaenyra for the Blacks is really like, we don't want to start this war because thousands will die, including our own children. And both are feeling that pain immensely. We see that Criston Cole, he's such an incompetent hand of the king. He always has been. And tensions are rising within the small council. And Alicent is just not being listened to at all. And she's, with Otto Hightower gone, is the last one of any sense. And then we're also seeing the small folk, their plight is starting to become more and more relevant. And we see some characters are kind of like heroes amongst them. And we even hear about the first dragon seed, which will be important later on. We see that Daemon heads to, oh my God, my timer, I messed my timer up, but I'll just go real fast.
Yeah, you got 30 seconds.
Thank you. Daemon gets to Harrenhal, which is one of my favorite locations in Westeros, and he starts to see visions, which is part of Harrenhal's magic. And he's told that he will die there. He actually sees Alice Rivers, who is the Witch of Harrenhal, and he takes over the place. What else happens? Criston Cole takes his troops and marches out, and the other dragons are headed to the east for safety.
What?
There's all kinds of things. I'm sorry, my bad. So instead of starting my timer, I ended up just increasing it to 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes. So I messed that whole thing up.
That's all right. Yep, we got it. Yeah, the other person should be in charge anyway of the timer. But yeah, there was a lot of little character moments in this. And you mentioned
Yes.
a few things in that breakdown that I really didn't know. In terms of Daemon, I know that he goes to, what is the castle's name?
Harrenhal.
Harrenhal, right. And he's expecting this big battle, and he's expecting to charge in there with his dragon, and then there's just nobody there. And they're like, hey, come in. We got venison stew. Take a load off. And he's like, what? So that whole thing was really interesting because it looked like the first time you see Daemon afraid. And I had not seen him he looked shook. We see Millie Alcock is back as a young Rhaenyra. That was super cool. But we also see what was it, Aegon the Second or Aegon the Third? That we saw that the blood and cheese decapitated the kid.
That's Jaehaerys. Yeah, that we saw that was
Jaehaerys.
decapitated. Yeah.
And was she sewing his head back together?
Yeah, because it's basically looking at the sins of Daemon. So Daemon's two major sins at this case is it was him that killed that kid. Like he sent those blood and cheese. And then also he has ruined Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra cannot trust another man again. She was so vulnerable when he started to approach her, which is kind of the sickness of Game of Thrones and the fact that like women and especially young women have no control over their own agencies. And he, persuaded her. Anyways, so yeah, in Harrenhal, the island next to it, which is the God's Eye, is like very magical, and Harrenhal is considered cursed. So like things like this will happen. Like you'll start to see your own sins. You'll start to, yeah. And Alice, who's there, she's very mysterious, but essentially is considered the Witch of Harrenhal, and nobody knows her age. And the Strongs, the family that's there now, they mentioned it in the show, but Larys is the nephew of that man.
Yeah.
And And so we also know that means that he's kind of the uncle of all of Rhaenyra's older kids with brown hair because of the bastard son situation. And so he has an attachment to Rhaenyra more than Larys, for sure. Everybody knows about the bastard thing, just nobody talks about it. They're not allowed to.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, they're obviously more attached. But nobody knows if Alice, the witch, she was the wet nurse, so she was the one that was give milk. But everybody jokes around or everybody talks about how either she's the wet nurse of the kids or the grandfather. Like nobody knows her age, and she's kind of ageless.
This is getting me probably more confused.
Okay, I won't go any further than that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it was interesting, and that makes sense. That the witch Alice, as you're speaking of, she kind of reminds me of the witch from the original Game of Thrones. That was
Sandra.
Sandra. Yeah, it was she that was like the lady in red, right? Is that what they called her?
Yeah, different kind of magic, but yeah.
Totally. Oh, okay, different magic. It's just funny though that it feels very similar to me. Just kind of watching it, I'm like, okay, cool. They're bringing in a little bit more mysticism in it. Because right now, yes, the biggest magical elements have been the dragons in this show. So it's cool that they're kind of bringing back in those elements. The other thing too with the strong that was at the head of the table, I kind of forgot about that in season 1 that Larys had burned down basically his brother, right?
And
Did that happen at Harrenhal? Well, that was his dad.
It did, yeah. Yeah, so that's Larys' uncle, but he killed his brother and dad, who were the lords of Harrenhal at first.
Right.
Yeah. And Harrenhal is super cursed. There's like a long curse. I would love to discuss it, but I'm not going to break it down. But there's a long history in Harrenhal. It's a really messed up place and incredibly
like a
important
episode.
Yeah, I know. If you didn't show up, I was going to be doing that kind of thing right there.
Okay, got it. But yeah, so we see that also like they've departed, right? Daemon's off doing his own thing. He's like, I'm going to take Harrenhal because this is the best way I can deal with everything. Now let's get back to Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra is doing everything she can to kind of avoid war at Rhaenys' advice. And we see how much Rhaenys is like kind of guiding her, the queen that never was. Is very wise too. She's definitely, is it Jaehaerys's, who was the original king?
Jaehaerys the Wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's his cousin, right? And so, I feel like she has a little bit of that wisdom. Even though he was kind of a weak king, he really was trying to do what was best for the most amount of people in his kingdom. She has a lot of that wisdom. Rhaenyra still feels like she has some of that too. And she's really in between a rock and a hard place where her advisors are like, send the dragons. And she's like, no, maybe there's a way out. Yeah, what did you think about Rhaenyra's
It's important that she reminds the small council that like the crown on her head is from Jaehaerys, which lived longer than Aegon, and they're all acting like Aegon's the best. And Aegon, the current, which will be called Aegon the Elder here in a second, he's wearing Aegon the Conqueror's helmet, or a crown, I'm sorry, which had a shorter reign. Yeah, bloodier, but shorter. And another thing too is Rhaenyra's small council that's like really kind of like trying to tell her what to do and almost kind of sets her queue up. They're all small lords from the King's Lands. Like, they're very small lords. The bigger lords know, like, we don't want to risk our men. Those guys are like lords right around the castle of the Red Keep. So they're really small, and she's not going to listen to them. She doesn't give a shit about them, honestly. They're just kind of there.
They're fighting for power, right? Like at that point, they want to be the higher lords, right? So it's like, let's send everybody, let's conquer because they have less to lose,
right? Yeah, but like her son talked to Kragan Stark and he's the king of the North, or of the Starks. And then we have Aaron. She sent the dragon to him in this episode, and those two families like dwarf the hell out of the people that are around her table. So she's making sure those two are happy. Yeah.
Right. And it's smart. So we're really diving into like the politics of the war now, which I actually found really, really interesting. I feel like this is politics done right. Star Wars, come on, get it together. But like, I thought that was all really fascinating. I love the Rhaenys and Rhaenyra relationship too. And before we kind of dive into where this kind of culminates at the end of the episode, where Rhaenyra meets Alicent, let's kind of jump over to the green side and talk about Alicent and Aegon and all them, because you're right. Why would Aegon want to follow the Conqueror? His dad was a wise leader, but I don't think he respected his dad. He never looked at him like, man, this guy's the ultimate ruler, because I think he saw him so old and feeble and people kind of manipulating him as he was passing away and as Aegon was kind of growing up. So of course maybe he would look at his grandpa, but probably, and I think definitely, the wrong role model.
A great great shout out there. So yeah, Viserys was never really thought by anybody as like a great leader. He was just a fun time leader. Like he lived in the shadow of Jaehaerys, which was the best Targaryen still to this day. Even in Daenerys' days, this is the best Targaryen. And so he was in the shadows, so he knew he could never be Jaehaerys. He tried a little bit in the very beginning of his life, but it was mostly just like, hey, let's just do tournaments and have fun and just kind of enjoy the fact that we live in good times. And so the older of the family remember Jaehaerys as like the guy, not Viserys. And so that's why like Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, stuff like that all look at him as the example. And when Aegon comes in and all he hears is stories of his not grandfather, but like, his first, the conqueror of this great guy, that's the one I want. And Maegor, his son, was an asshole too, stuff like that. Like they're looking at those. And it's just young kids. That's the problem is the people who have these like nukes, basically these big dragons, most of them are irresponsible. And it's the most important thing so it's like, that's really terrible that they have all the power, but they do. And yeah. And he puts his buddy, essentially, Kristen Cole, in charge. And Kristen's just like got nothing to lose. He's only known fighting. He's from Dorne, so he's away from his home, which is new for the show, not from the books. But yeah, the idea that he's just like, let's just go ahead and fight things. And then he promotes his friends to the Kingsguard. And he kind of gets a little bit of taste of that when the Kingsguard guys are like, oh yeah, let's go get laid. And he's like, you guys are supposed to be celibate, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we are. Oops. And it's like, yep, you promoted your buddies instead of actual good knights that could protect you. Start to kind of foreshadow, oh shit, I messed up,
Yes. I love this example. I think in real world, we see these things happen in business and stuff and in politics as well. Yeah. And it's like just hiring your buddies may not be the right choice for making the best decisions for your kingdom, for, your political sphere, even though you want to work with your friends. Everybody wants to work with your friends, but can your friends actually do the job? And in this one, it's like, they probably can't. I love the shout out for Kristen Cole. Man, that actor's been getting a ton of flack. Not rightfully so, because he's just doing a job playing an actor. That's pretty wild that people can come after him for that. But in another way you can look at it, man, he's doing a good job. I did not expect him to be such an asshole. But he has become such in a weird way, I feel like he's my Joffrey for the season, where I'm like, God, I kind of want that guy to die. He's taking every little bit of power he has and just using it to be a total dick to everybody around him. And he's even used it to kind of usurp Alicent too. And it's like, you got kind of what you wanted from her. You were like hooking up with her, and now you're like, I don't care. I mean, he does, but also
he does,
he's being a little bit of an a-hole to her too.
He's only there to secure himself and just to he went into this game as like a noble person and so corrupted, so far gone, and the only one making choices to be evil when everybody else is like evil by trait or be evil by position. He's like making choices. And you said Joffrey. I count him more to Aaron Greyjoy from Game of Thrones, the Greyjoy that came in with an army and was like, he's like, excuse the term, but a star fucker, right? Where they're like, I'm not actually the celebrity, but I'm going to attach myself to the celebrity and then just be a jerk to everybody around me.
Right. Like, act like exactly I am one of them.
And he's not, right? Like, I love that about Alicent's brother who comes up, who's just be like, oh, you really did a good job. You're from Dorne. Ooh, that's really hard then. And he's just totally like, kind of gut checks him real quick, being like, you're not one of us, which later on, of course, backfires on him when he, like, Kristen Cole knows how to avoid dragons. But, like, it's kind of a good little check to Kristen Cole being like, oh, that's right, you're trash that got promoted, not born like us, So,
which was a really cool conversation, a really cool kind of slight. I love how Game of Thrones kind of just adds in these characters out of nowhere sometimes, and they actually play such a big role in that moment. It's really great. It's like one of the things I love, I think, about the Game of Thrones universe is that kind of stuff. But I love that character because you're right. That conversation was like, oh, it's funny. You came out of nowhere. You came from nothing. And then you took my dad's job, who's been doing it for 3 kings. And wow, you've done really good. Like that was a sick line.
All of Old Town, which is where he's from, is very unhappy with this. And they have one of the sons down there. He's still a little young, but I guarantee in the next season he's going to be riding his dragon because he's Daemon and Aemon and Aegon's brother, Darion, is got a dragon too, and he's down there learning from Otto, not from the people in King's Landing right now.
Wow. That's some cool like insider knowledge. I dig that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this was just a lot of politics and setting up. Just to flip back over to the black side, we see that Rhaenyra is sending Baela, I want to say, to go. I don't know where she's going. You said to the north to Cregan?
She's sending Rhaena. So Baela's the
Rhaena.
older sister.
That's right.
So she's sending her.
Getting confused on the names.
I know. They only use like 5. So Rhaena's going to Pentos with dragon eggs, one of the kids, or 2 of the kids, the smallest ones, and stuff like that. So that's where they're headed. The key to this situation...
Sorry, really quick. I would say that was just a good reminder because I forgot that Rhaenyra had other kids too. It's like I only thought of Luke and Jace, is it?
Yeah. Those kids are actually the more important ones too. If I'm being honest, one of their names is Aegon the Younger. So that's why I was saying we're going to soon be calling the other one Aegon the Elder or Older. It's because one of those 2 kids' his name is Aegon the Younger, and he becomes a little more important. Yeah,
got it.
Because this battle these events only happen over a couple years, but everything is escalated a lot. So they're going to be pretty important. And then the reason this is happening, the reason we saw like the actor did such a wonderful job of showing disappointment is Rhaena is the only one that doesn't have a dragon. And so she's giving babysitter duties, and she feels like if I didn't have this, I would be fighting. And Rhaenyra is supposed to be representing like women taking charge for themselves. That's why Rhaenys is so invested in her and stuff like that. And so for her to then turn around and say like, hey, Rhaena, you don't have a dragon. You're not useful to me. Go be my, surrogate mom for my kids is kind of like going back to the men are doing things. You go do women things. That reflects badly on Rhaenyra. Meanwhile, Baela, who's the older sister, is out there, scouting patrolling. And then almost fighting. She almost actually attacked Kristen Cole, which I wish she just like let loose of the dragon.
Right. A little burst of fire right before they hit the tree line would have been great.
Burn the forest down, which, spoiler alert, that's how the dragons do things. They'll just burn the forest down in the future. We see with Daenerys. That's a really cool moment. It will change quite a bit going forward, but they're just setting up those kids to be amazing characters, and I love how well they're being portrayed by these actors.
Yeah. No, thank you for clarifying that Rhaena thing, because I was like, why is she so bummed? It makes a ton of sense. Yeah, what you said. So all of this stuff was fascinating. We get to the point where like both sides are just saying, go to battle. We see even Aegon is like putting on the armor, like you were saying. He's about to ride in. Larry Strong he's totally Littlefinger at this point. He's wrapping him completely around his finger. He's able to manipulate him by saying so little.
Yeah. I want to add in real quick. While we're seeing Larys actually officially become like the Master of Whispers, so has the White Worm for Rhaenyra. So now they both have their Masters and Mistresses of Whispers. So, which is such an important part. The series, Littlefinger, when we're talking about Game of Thrones and some of our favorite characters, we talk about those guys a lot, and they were both Masters of Whispers as well.
Okay. This is all starting to connect. That makes sense. This is why you need podcasts like this to clarify things. All of that was just, I think it was so well done. It basically comes to this point where Rhaenyra she decides, I need to go see Alicent face to face to see if I can avoid this bloodshed, because a battle with dragons is the bloodiest of battles. Yeah. So they come up with this plan to sneak her in and find a place where Alicent is outside the castle. I was so surprised by this. You were saying that this maybe isn't part of the book?
It's not a part of the books because, importantly, the books are basically a retelling from 2 different sources, but I mean, like, if those sources aren't in the room, they don't know about what happened, and so there's rumors and things like that. But that's all, like, that's the thing, right? If they didn't know, so obviously Rhaenyra snuck into King's Landing and in hiding talked to Alicent, so nobody but those 2 people would know about it. And so let me kind of explain why this is actually such an important scene. So they talk and they're having their conversation, and the end of last season, what we got was Rhaenyra reaffirming that she's going to be queen. And then we got Alicent, who misheard Viserys on his deathbed hear that Aegon should be in charge. And he had mentioned the Song of Ice and Fire. Now, in this conversation in this episode, all this is coming out, and it first starts off with these 2 are friends, by the way. I want to remind everybody that they are actually lifelong friends.
Yeah, and Rhaenyra tries to relate to her by talking about we were friends. Remember,
Yeah.
we were sitting at the games and we were chatting about this. So yeah,
Yeah, and Alicent mourns, her fallen nephew and her friend's child dying too. So like, there's all kinds of things complicated about this. So Alicent then says like, no, he said Aegon. He changed his mind, and so you could almost see it in Rhaenyra's face, like her start to doubt herself, like maybe he did switch
did
to
he?
Aegon in the last couple hours of his life.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but
she acted that
then-
very well. Or
she
they
did,
acted
both
that
them
very
nailed.
well.
Yeah, Emma. Yeah, exactly. And so then, but then she mentions the fire and ice. Now, the reason the fire and ice is so important is there are literally two people that we've seen in this entire series that actually knows that story: Viserys and Rhaenyra. It's such a guarded secret that Aegon dreamt this up. He has the dreamer ability, same with Helena in this show, where he's able to see the future. And so that's why he's been trying to just pass it down to the actual rulers to make sure that we have somebody at the end that can fight the Night Walkers that are coming in, the White Walkers. I'm sorry, for Game of Thrones. So when she hears that, she knows, bullshit. He didn't change his mind. He thought you were me and was talking about Aegon the Conqueror. So I love that the aftermath of this then is Alicent is like, wait a minute, I didn't know about that story, because nobody knows about that story. And so now Alicent's like, you're probably right. Actually, Rhaenyra was supposed to be in charge. We're too far. Kristen Cole is marching with an army.
Right.
Daemon is sitting at Harrenhal. Everybody knows Daemon took over Harrenhal. I put quotes on that for the podcast listeners. So it's like these two women are like, you're right. We fucked up. We're too far gone.
Yeah.
War is gone out of our hands. And it takes away the free will that these two have, which is so important book-wise, because after reading the book, of course you kind of choose a side, but I hate Alicent. I hate the Greens. And now it's like they're kind of thrusted into it, and you almost have an appreciation for both sides in a way that you don't have before.
Yeah, yeah. It seems very much like, and well done describing all of that. I think, yeah, you perfectly nailed it. But yeah, I feel like the show has kind of painted the Greens as just the enemies, right? And when you hear these two women talk about it, you're like, oh, Alicent really did believe she was doing the right thing by Jacaerys' wishes. She's like, my son needs to be king so that, it respects my late husband's wishes. And then, I love that there's doubt in both women in this conversation.
Exactly.
In such a short conversation, it's like, remember when we were friends? Remember, I also want you to know, and you should know, I feel bad that you lost your son, and I feel bad that you lost your grandson. And also like, wait, what did Jacaerys tell you? And then like, oh no, maybe I didn't deserve, maybe he changed his mind the last minute, but even though he never did, the entire time I was growing up, he said, you were going to be queen. You were going to be queen. You were going to be queen, but maybe I'm wrong. And then it's like, wait, what did you say about the song? I loved it. There's so much that is revealed in this time, and these actresses or actors do such a good job of just like showing doubt in such a little moment. It's like, damn, they nailed it. So you're right. I thought that again, without just kind of remembering what I remembered from the first season, it just is so impactful. It's so important. And I love it. I love that this battle ultimately might be the reason why when we get to Game of Thrones, Daenerys and her brother, and they have the dragons, it's like people forgot about dragons. They forgot about who was supposed to be in charge or who was supposed to be at the throne to have the army to stop the White Walkers that we see at the end of the Game of Thrones. So it's like, this is a prequel done right. I really feel like, we're following another prequel with The Acolyte that I feel like is not planting the seeds I would love to make everything make sense. And I don't even know if I really want it connected in that way, where this is like, it is so far apart, and yet it's planting the seeds so well to where it makes sense when you start Game of Thrones, why everybody is in the state they're in.
Yeah. And for the book readers too, this is the first experience I've ever had where being a book reader doesn't necessarily give you a huge advantage, because it's telling you the truth that the books are confused about. And that is such a cool experience as somebody who read the books and stuff like that. And then it echoes some of the major themes that George R. R. Martin, who needs to get back to work, talks about all the time. And that's the fact that like women are often punished by the men's actions, essentially. There's an actual phrase he uses in Game of Thrones for it. But these two women right here who are now having to deal with a bunch of dudes at their councils wanting to go to war and how can't stop it, when it's like, if we just talked about it, we would have been fine. And unfortunately, so many will die from it, including their children. Like, it's just going to be everybody. And another thing I wanted to point out, I actually was discussing this last night with somebody else. It's clear, it's more clear in other places, but Rhaenyra is still mourning Jace. And so the reason she doesn't want to kill thousands of people, she doesn't want to do that. But also, she's like, I just lost one son. I can't lose another one. That's why she's sending all other kids that don't have dragons essentially to Pentos, which is one of the safest places they can be in the east. That's where Daenerys and another version of a series from Game of Thrones. That's where they're actually at in the beginning of the series of Game of Thrones. They're in Pentos as well.
So those kids will probably turn out to be Daenerys and
No, not at all. Just to hit, no. Yeah, we're like 300 years before those events or whatever. So or 100, whatever it is. But yeah, so don't worry about that. Yeah, 100 years.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, it all makes a ton of sense. I think it's starting to make a ton of sense is how Game of Thrones gets kicked off and everything.
Just to add in real quick.
Yeah.
The story, we're going to find out what happens to those kids in this season, in the next 2 maybe episodes. So don't worry, that whole them going to Pentos thing, it doesn't work out.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Oh, boy. But there's dragon eggs. Well, there's got to be something that happens with those dragon eggs.
The dragon eggs that we see in Game of Thrones are from Dreamfire, which is Helena's dragon, the one that can see the future. Those are her dragons. Her dragon eggs are the ones that Dany eventually gets.
Wow. Okay. Does something happen with these dragons? Well, no, I just want to watch it.
Okay.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's too spoilery. There is, talking about seeds being planted, though, we get a moment at the bar where there's somebody saying that they are one of Aegon's bastard sons or something like that. What's the deal with that guy? Because that kind of threw me off. I'm like, is this guy just a grifter? Is he just trying to impress his friends? Like, what's the deal? Because he felt like it seemed like he really believed it.
He's one of a few characters that I've had people ask Jonathan, for example, like, what's the deal? Why are we learning about these guys? Him, remember there's the blacksmith that we've seen him talk to his family about how poor they are because they keep making the scorpion bolts to kill dragons. Like, they're poor right now. We're also seeing the 2 brothers, one of them that's a shipwright that's working on the ship, and the other one that's like going for clams and keeps looking at Sea Smoke, the dragon. We keep visiting these characters because they're about to be very important. I thought in this episode, but they might wait a little bit. But to not spoil too much, they're all considered dragon seeds. The one in the bar said that in this episode. Like, when you're a dragon seed and you don't have the white cloaks protecting you, got to protect yourself. All of them are dragon seeds. So,
what does that mean, dragon seeds? Like, I know they come from the
bastard sons of Valerians. Yeah.
Okay. Does that give them rights to be able to fly dragons, or
it gives them the ability? If you don't have Targaryen or Valerian, which is also Targaryen kind of, if you don't have that blood in you, you can't ride a dragon.
Pretty cool. Yeah. All right. So that whole scene was very interesting, and it's cut short in a way because Aegon shows up, and then he also runs into Aemon and ruins Aemon's thing. So you can see there's also tensions between those brothers. I mean, as of right now, I feel like there's bigger characters to hate, but I know you were kind of saying like he's kind of a jerk in his own right later on. Right now, he just seems
off mic. I'll talk about why I hate the fact that that scene with Aemon right there specifically is really messed up. I'll talk about it off mic though because it gets terrible. But yeah.
Okay, got it. We'll have more details to come in future episodes. But I thought this was another fantastic episode. It's Game of Thrones, or I guess House of the Dragon just doesn't miss. Every episode seems to be really fantastic, and it just keeps adding more. Like talk about mysteries and things being connected, and like giving us answers while also like building out the world, building out new characters. This episode definitely did it. It wasn't like a massively action-packed episode, but you kind of see how the war is spanning out in the world and how both houses are trying to focus on building out the war. So I thought that was just really, really well done in this episode.
And for those that were like, hey, I'm ready for battles, the next episode should be battles. There should be like 3 episodes scattered throughout the next that are going to be pretty heavy battles, and we're gonna see our favorite characters on Dragonback.
Yeah. What's interesting is like, again, we're comparing, like, I guess, unfairly the Acolyte to this. Like, the Acolyte, I want to see Jedi battles, and we got a really good one last week.
Oh, yeah.
For House of D, or like our Hot D, I don't even care so much about the battles. I'm just like, there's so much drama and tension and like just good storytelling between the characters. It's just like, what are they going to do next? Oh, Daemon's a wild card. Oh my God, Aegon is just being a madman. It's like, the battles are just a cherry on top to what is just great storytelling in a cool world.
there's so many little things where it's like, just with Daemon correcting the guy to say your grace, like the layers, that means that he's basically saying I'm king over Rhaenyra, and like it's all kinds of things, and it's like Acolyte couldn't carry that. Acolyte couldn't use like two words to make you like, oh no, what? Like that doesn't happen in Acolyte.
Yeah, it could have, but
they chose not to.
yeah.
Although this last episode of Acolyte was, I think, quite good. I really enjoyed it myself.
It was good. It was a great one. So yeah, all in all, I think this was a fantastic episode in the edition of House of the Dragon. I'm so excited to see where it goes next episode. This one feels like an episode I can go back and watch again to pick up more on everything. So I think I will redo that. Any other final thoughts on this episode?
It's the calm before the storm. Things are about to get blown up, and Harrenhal specifically. If you guys want to research Harrenhal, I really suggest. I mean, don't look into what happens in it, but it's such an important place. We see it in Game of Thrones. We're going to see it a lot in the new spinoff that was recently announced with Aegon the Conqueror. He's kind of the reason that place is famous in the first place. Harrenhal. That's where Daemon's at right now, and it's pretty big.
Right on. All right, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Tune in every week. Like I said, we're talking about the Acolyte. We are also talking about The Boys, which that seems to be flying through. Are we still running the contest?
I forgot about the contest. There is a contest. I'll put a new tweet out for it. You guys can retweet that one. Or repost or whatever the heck to get involved in that one. And comment, whatever. We'll figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Follow, like, subscribe, comment on a post. You'll be entered into a drawing. We got a really cool gift card for you guys. And basically, I would say it's going through July. So we're at this point.
Let's do that. We have other things coming up for a contest. We just don't have them yet. So keep an eye on our social media and stuff like that. We have some cool stuff coming in from some really cool companies that we'll be giving away later this month. So
absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Aloha.
Bye.